Hey now, Forge fans. It's the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. It's Focus on Forge. It's the CPL Final edition of Focus on Forge. Your Forge FC on the road in what will be the final match of the season because it's the CPL Final. And they're facing Atletico Ottawa. Kickoff at 6 o'clock at TD Place Stadium. Now, if you have any way of getting there, whether it's drive, bus, train, I can tell you, you will be amongst a lot of Forge fans. The Sea of Orange is traveling to Ottawa, and there's going to be a lot of support for our Hamilton club here. Now, even me, I'm a guy who pretty much refuses to leave Hamilton. There's nothing to see anywhere, except this weekend because there's a CPL final to watch. Getting me to go to Dundas that's a little daunting. I refuse. Stony Creek, maybe, but not even. Ancaster, don't even mention Ancaster. I'm not leaving Hamilton. But even I will be hopping on a bus, and I will be heading to Ottawa for... If I'm going, there's no excuse, because I don't go anywhere. But I will be at the CPL Final, and I'd love to see everyone there. If you can't, though, the game will air on One Soccer and Fubo TV. And if you can't get there in person, and if you, however... wherever you get your Forge content, whether you listen to it, whether you watch it, whether you do both. Hopefully this reaches you in time. At the time of this recording, I can tell you that Forge fans will be gathering outside of Tim Hortons Field, Gate 3 to be exact, to give Forge a send-off. 11:50 a.m. is when fans are being asked to gather outside of Tim Hortons Field and cheer on your Forge players and coaches as they leave for Ottawa. That's on Friday. If I haven't reached you in time, that's okay. There are other ways to cheer on the team. And this is such an interesting final. We're going to check in shortly with Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic. We're going to go in depth into the tactics, into the philosophies of these two clubs. To me, that's the big storyline here. Because you have two clubs that could not be more juxtaposed in terms of contrasting styles of play. And we're going to get into the bowels, into the depths of these tactics, the strengths, the weaknesses. That's all coming up with Alex, who is a analyst, a soccer analyst with CanPL.ca, also One Soccer. There is no one that watches more soccer than Alex Gangué-Ruzic, and he's going to prove it to us. I have faith in him. He's going to prove it to us in moments when he joins us and we get into the tactics of this because it's interesting. You have two clubs playing very differently, as I mentioned. Forge FC has kind of set the standard in this league, a possession game, a front foot type game. You have defenders that will take some chances. They want to dictate the play. They want to dictate tempo, and they want to play their game and control for 90 minutes how the match is going to be played. And they're going to hang on to the ball. They are going to look for areas, spaces in the attacking areas in that final third. And they're going to cause a lot of pressure on the defenders and on those defensive midfielders of the teams they're playing because of their press as well. Ottawa, a little different. Yes, they press in different areas. They're more of a team that's going to be patient. They're going to sit back. They're going to allow you to possess the ball. If Forge wants to possess, in the 4 matches they've played this season, the average possession time is, I think, around 63% in favor of Forge. But there have been 2 draws, and each club has won a match. So ball possession doesn't always tell the story, but that's how Forge wants to play. It's the best way to defend, and for them, it's the best way to attack and control the game. Ottawa, they're going to allow Forge to do that. You can be sure the possession numbers, especially in a close, if the game match is close, you're going to see the possession numbers very high for Forge in this one. And Ottawa probably doesn't care because that's not their game. They're going to defend. They're going to be disciplined. They're going to maintain their shape. And they are going to beat you on the counter because that's their game. They're going to look for mistakes, wait for mistakes, pounce on them, and they're going to beat you on the counter. And set pieces, a big part of Ottawa's game as well. It's a club where the margin for error, when you're playing against Ottawa, the margin for error is razor thin. How does Forge feel about this matchup, though? I caught up with head coach, technical director Bobby Smyrniotis. I spoke to Ashtone Morgan, fullback and striker, Woobens Pacius, who, by the way, has now scored in back-to-back games after a bit of a cold streak in there. So he's feeling pretty good. So we'll check with all three, and then we will go to Alex. First, though, Bobby Smyrniotis.
I think it's fitting that these two teams are going to be competing for the championship. I think two distinct styles, but two teams who are doing it very well on different ends of the spectrum, and I think that's football. Every coach and team can have their own philosophy, but you always have to respect when another team is doing it very well, even if it's different from what you do. And I think that's what they've proven to do since early on in the season, and it's only fitting that our two teams are playing for a championship.
Bus rides already being planned, fans from Hamilton making the trip to Ottawa. How special is it for even coaches, players to look up in a game like that away from home and still being able to see sections of orange cheering Forge on?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. We've been there 2 times this year, and we've had a good contingent of fans. I'm expecting a few more. And in those past 2 games, to be honest, we felt their energy. We hear them in the crowd. It's been excellent. So we're just looking forward to as many people making that trip down the 401.
Yeah, Bobby touched on something there. I wrote about this this week as well. You can read it at forgefc.ca. This matchup is great for the league. I mean, if you really think about it, this is the ideal matchup. You have Forge, who is the marquee name, a club again in their 4th consecutive championship match. They've won 2 already. They've been the perennial benchmark in this league as Forge FC. So you have them. You have your marquee club in the final. Then you have Ottawa, the newest club. This is only their 2nd season. The fact that they've been able to make it to a final, to finish first in the table during the regular season, right? An accomplishment there. There's some intrigue there. How did Ottawa do it so quickly? Is this the kind of league now where, and it's a good thing, especially for future expansion clubs, is there so much talent, soccer talent out there that just hasn't been given the opportunity, that you don't need these deep rebuilds where you have to tear the whole thing down and rebuild from scratch? Ottawa got to a final in just their 2nd year, and they've experienced a lot of turnover in the offseason. So the messaging is great if you're a CPL club, and if you're a fan of a CPL club who didn't have such a great year, right? Maybe you don't need a big rebuild. Maybe you can be competitive as early as next season. Maybe Edmonton makes a final next season. That's now there's a lot of differences between Ottawa and Edmonton in terms of ownership and the financial situation there. But ultimately the message has been kind of sent. This is a league where you can thrive because there is so much talent to go around. And the nature of the league is that you're going to have regular season parity. And yes, Forge has been in there for 4 consecutive years now, but on the grand scheme of things, it's been a year full of parity. So I think it's good for the league. Ideal matchup. Not only that, but you have Ottawa, who has a great fan base that is building, right? You have a great stadium, TD Place Stadium, a great place to catch a game. A bigger stadium gives you a little bit more of a big market feel. And those smaller market type stadiums are great, by the way. I mean, they're intricate to the sport. You look around the world, and those kind of smaller, more intimate stadiums are legendary. But from an optics level, from a broadcast, don't even get me started on the camera views at some of the stadiums in the CPL. I mean, I'll save that for as an off-season rant, because some of these stadiums, you can't even see the ball. But anyways, that's besides the point. I think it's an ideal scenario for the league to have these 2 specific clubs in the final. And Ashtone Morgan, fullback for Forge FC, someone else I caught up with after training this week, and he had a lot of things. We had a lot of things to talk about. We'll hear from Ashtone Morgan, then we'll go to Woobens Pacius, and then we'll check in with Alexandre Gangué-Ruzic. But here's Ashtone. You have 2 contrasting styles this weekend. Both clubs successful this year, playing 2 different ways, it's kind of great that there are multiple ways to get there, multiple ways to win. Just your thoughts on the 2 styles and how they might clash this weekend in the final.
There are different styles in football, but the biggest thing is for us to focus on ourselves and focus on what we can control. How we play and how much energy we bring to the match. It's another final, another game for a trophy. These are the games and moments and stuff we want to play for in our careers, from the beginning to the end of your careers, wherever it is. It's just special moments that we want to, put our best foot forward.
Can there be something to be said about a club like yours? I mean, they have a veteran side there as well with some players, but I mean, this club's been through so much over the years. Even this season, it's been up and down. How does that adversity help this club in big moments?
Yeah, definitely. We've been playing big matches from February. We've been in from early this year. We've been playing in a few big matches this season already, and I'm happy that everybody's been here for these moments. And you have big players and ready for these big matches. And you can see we turn up and show out for these matches, and hopefully we get some great support down in Ottawa for Sunday's match, and we're all just looking forward to it.
Even if it is an away match, and even if the majority of the crowd is supporting Ottawa, can those big crowds feed the away team as well? Is it exciting to be in an atmosphere like that?
Yeah, definitely. It's a final at the end of the day. The final could be in front of however fans you want, and no fans at all. At the end of the day, it's for a trophy, and this is why we play football. This is why we do what we do and do what we love. We wanna play in these games and win stuff for our club.
Ashtone Morgan, a guy that's thrived under this Bobby Smyrniotis Forge FC system. Another guy who's thrived this season, Woobens Pacius, scoring now in back-to-back games. His goal in the semifinal against Calvary at Tim Hortons Field was ultimately the match winner on a PK, just clinical, as always, when he lines up from the spot. Here's Woobens, another guy I caught up with this week after training. Your successful PK was the game winner in that second leg against Calvary and helped punch your ticket to get to the final. Talk about that PK and your mentality, because you wanted the ball right away. Is that kind of that striker's instinct that took over?
Yeah, of course. As a striker, you're always trying to score. Of course, with the situation that we were in the game, with the pressure and everything, of course, there's a little bit more pressure. But again, I just want to stay focused and knowing that I can score. So it's not different than when I'm doing in training or in a regular season game. It's what I have to do is score goals. So again, I was pretty good about it.
Without giving away too many secrets, what's your approach when you line up to take that kick? Are you trying to place it? Are you trying to get some speed on it? What are you looking for?
I mean, it's something that I work in training. All week I choose my side, and from the first day of the week, I know that if I have a PK, I'm going to shoot on that spot. I'm not going to change it because it's the game, So I shoot at the place that I choose, and after that, I try to stay calm, because everyone is, put their faith in you. So you got to stay calm, and after that, you just shoot the ball.
Do you kind of put your head down and just ignore the keeper, just in case the keeper maybe gets into your head a little bit?
Exactly. So, like I said, my side is always to choose. So whatever the goalkeeper is doing, I know that I'm going to shoot that side. If it's the right or the left, it doesn't matter. So I'm just trying to stay focused.
This matchup against Ottawa, it's interesting because you have two teams that have made it this far, playing two very different types of styles. What can you say about the two different styles and how they contrast between Forge and Ottawa?
Yeah, everyone knows that we're a team that loves to keep the ball, and everyone knows too that Ottawa is a team that like to sit and wait for counter-attacks. They wait for a mistake. So I think we just have to stay calm, stay patient, move the ball around, and try to find these gaps or these moments when we can hurt them. So again, we just have to stay calm, stay focused, and I'm pretty sure we can do something big in Ottawa this weekend.
And I'm sure they're expecting a big crowd, even as the away team. Do you like those big crowds and that atmosphere kind of feeds into the away team as well, I would think?
Yeah, of course. As long as they're fans, even if it's for the opponent, it's not really a big deal. As long as there's fans, we heard them shouting for them or for us, it's not a big deal. Of course, when we play at home, of course, there's that difference, but when it's away, no. So we're gonna stay focused, and I'm pretty sure again we're gonna do something big.
Pacius is feeling it, and the club is feeling it, and they'll be feeling it even more when they look up into the stands and see all of the orange that is traveling to Ottawa. Should be something special. Speaking of something special, I'm a big fan of his. Alex Gangué-Ruzic. I mentioned it earlier. He's been on the program before. I don't know that I'm willing to bet that nobody watches as much soccer as Alex does. Follow him on Twitter. It's nonstop. I mean, all leagues, men's, women's, he watches it all, and he's the best man for the job because we have to talk tactics. And let's bring him in now. Alex Gangué-Ruzic on the Forge Audio Network. Focus on Forge. All right, Alex, we were so impressed with you last time around that we had to go for a bit of a double dip here. And I want to talk to you specifically for this final preview as Forge takes on Ottawa in our nation's capital. I am fascinated by this kind of juxtaposed two styles of play that could not be more contrasting, but both clubs had similar successes this season, and they meet in the final despite approaching the game in two different ways, which, I mean, I think is great for the league that, we have different ways to win. And we, because it was kind of that, you had Forge, Cavalry, then Halifax, then Pacific, but all the clubs kind of played a similar, high press, possession style of player, at least wanted to play that way. And Ottawa just approaches it completely different, and they've had so much success this season playing that way. So when you get into the tactical breakdown of the two clubs here, what is it? Because is it as simple as Ottawa being structured and looking for a counter? I mean, is that kind of full stop? They just execute that brilliantly?
I mean, Ottawa is it's such a layered tactical plan, and that's where credit has to be given to Carlos Gonzalez. Obviously, the head coach come in and he's implemented, because it's a mix of a bunch of things. Like there's mix of modern soccer philosophies. There's also a mix of just good old traditional defending, and they tie that in with the ruthless transition game. It leads to this perfect package that has been Atletico Ottawa this year. I think you see it off the ball. It's traditional in the sense that it's 4-4-2. You get bodies behind the ball. You try to limit spaces between the blocks of four. It's something that Diego Simeone has made famous with Atletico Madrid. You try to limit that space that, teams like Forge, for example, who love to use the space in the midfield. You deny them that space and time, it's going to frustrate them. And then from there, it's just about keeping that four solid and then winning everything in the air. But then on the ball, they're an interesting team, because then they go to more of the back three that we also see in the modern game from teams that like to build up. Obviously, Ottawa, ideally, they win the ball back higher in midfield and they counter through, their Blue Tablas, their Brian Wrights, etc. But they're also comfortable that, hey, if, say Forge goes down the field, and Ottawa wins back the ball in their own half, they switch to that back three. They will play out the back, and they're also comfortable holding possession. So because of that, they are a bit frustrating, because if you go against them and hold 70% of the ball, Ottawa's fine holding 30% of the ball. But then if you dare them to beat you in possession, they're also comfortable with holding 60% of the ball, which makes it unique. So they're not just like those teams that will sit back and that's all they do.
And it's one thing to play that way, or as a coach to deploy that kind of a system, but you need the right players. And Ottawa seems to have just the perfect recipe for this style that's been so great for them.
Well, you have to buy in. First of all, that's a lot of, you have to enjoy defending. I think the word they've used, which is a great way to describe it, is you have to enjoy suffering, because sometimes defending isn't always fun. Like it's a lot of running without the ball. It's a lot of work. You have to stay organized. You step 1 meter off of your shape, that's a line for an opposing team to exploit. But Ottawa, they seem to love it. You look at them when they defend, they smile when they defend. They smile when they make a clearance, when they make a big tackle. They almost feed off of that sort of moment. So I think that takes a buy-in from the top to bottom, because it's also the strikers have to defend. Like when Brian Wright and Balou Tabla are starting, say, or Malcolm Shaw, they have to be ready to defend. That's not something you're used to seeing from strikers or midfielder like Ollie Bassett, so creative. Well, he has to be ready to defend. So obviously they've got that buy-in from the back. I mean, that back five will give anyone in the league a run for their money. But what's also been most impressive is that Carlos Gonzalez has got some very talented attacking players to buy into the defensive system, which is part of the reason why it works.
And on the other side of things with Forge, Bobby's talked about Guardiola and being an admirer of his style and what he did in Barcelona all those years ago and has carried with him. And do you see some similarities in Guardiola's philosophy compared to what Bobby's doing with Forge?
Absolutely. I mean, I think for me, when I think of Guardiola's philosophy, it's very fluid. There's a lot, but the main principle is midfield dominance. Like the quote that will always stick out with me is outnumber the midfield. If someone puts 2 in midfield, you go 3. If someone puts 3, you put 4. If someone's brave enough to put 4, you put 5. And that kind of just reminds me of the way Forge plays. Their midfield group is so solid. I think it was just, you look at the Cavalry game, what they were able to do with Kyle Becker, Alessandro Hojiabapur, and Abu Bakar Sissoko. That's a 3 that would be, stars on any team. They're the 3. You lose Kyle Becker, you're still going to have a Noah Jensen slotting in. You're still going to have other names who can step up, and that sort of depth in midfield. And they just find a way to really play and originate everything through midfield. Their first goal against Cavalry, that Hojiabapur pass to David Chouanier, that starts from the midfield. So when I think of Guardiola, I think midfield superiority, I think midfield dominance, I think midfield interplay, and Forge ticks all of those boxes. And then from there, everything seems to fall in place when their midfield's ticking.
And you look at the similarities, right? We're talking about 2 Spanish clubs and now 2 Canadian clubs. Atletico Madrid, their style was almost born out of necessity because they needed a way to compete with the Barcelonas and the Real Madrids. And in this case, Ottawa being a newish team, a lot of new faces, a lot of turnover. And in order for them to be able to play with the Forges, the Cavalries, because, they can't necessarily, it's one thing, with Forge Cavalry, we know they have their feeder systems, and these are philosophies and tactics that have evolved through having continuity in your lineup, and Ottawa just didn't have that. So you see, this style is almost a response to the Barcelona, the Real Madrid, the Forge, the Cavalry. There's a lot of similarities in the 2 leagues and how those 2 philosophies were kind of born.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of fascinating tactical growth you want to see in the CPL, because I think it's great to, like we mentioned off the top, to see this, diversity in tactical styles, because I don't think there's one way to win. I think you can see teams that win with the ball. You can see teams that win with high press. I think you can see teams win with back 3s, back 4s. I think what's clear is obviously in the modern game, there are some principles you must adhere to, such as transition goals are still the best goal to score no matter who you are. Forge will also adhere to that. They score a lot of goals in transition. You need to be solid defensively, etc. But then from there, there's so much freedom in how you can play. And it's fascinating to see a team like Forge. They're just so drilled. Like, what I love about watching Forge tactically is that everyone knows their role. Like, where it's going to go in the midfield. They have these, in French, they say automatisme, when there's like movements that you just know are like back of your head. They're moving into space. They're moving into areas. And there's just something that's, like you mentioned, that's been there from the academy days. Some of these players who've been with Bobby for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they know at the back of their hand. But then you look at Ottawa as well, how they've bought into the defensive side, how they know the game plan, they know it to heart, and they live and breathe that. There's also the unique contrast of that, which is so fascinating.
And you wonder now, with the success Ottawa's had this year, would you be surprised to see some other clubs even as early as next season, maybe not copy it exactly, because again, you do need the right coach and the right players, but take some of what Ottawa's doing to maybe make them more competitive against clubs like Forge in the future?
Yeah, obviously success always breeds copycats, and I think it's a good blueprint to have, especially for a team that's maybe just trying to seek out an identity, because then from there you can evolve and adapt. But at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to start with the defensive foundation and build out the rest than it is to, you score a bunch of goals, but then you have to tighten your ship. So it's easier to go from back to front, from front to back. So I think it's smart for teams that maybe are struggling a bit defensively. They allow, a lot more goals to look at what Ottawa's doing, look at that sort of buy-in that they're getting from all their players, use that as a base, and then maybe build from there. They don't have to be, say, as defensive, but I think always having a good defensive shape is usually the backbone of most good teams. And I think if you look at Forge and Cavalry's first year when they in 2019, defense is what got them where they were. Forge as well has always been a team built on defense, so it makes a lot of sense to use that as a building block.
And I think on top of that too, even, what this league has shown us is that there's a lot of talent out there and a lot of players that can fit into roles if they need to be. So you don't even need these big rebuilds right now in the CPL. If you're Edmonton, for example, looking what Ottawa's done, now again, there are some major differences with ownership and things like that, but there's hope that if you are a supporter of a club that had a bad year, you don't have to go through these strenuous rebuilds necessarily. It could be as early as next season that you're able to be competitive.
Yeah, and I think Edmonton and York are 2 good examples, because Edmonton, obviously, like you mentioned, maybe a bit of disparity there in terms of what they were able to put together with the team, but they were still competitive every game. And I think that's a credit that they were able to take, it's like a ragtag group on paper and make it look, coherent, a team every week. They would go out and compete. They would look good. They would, give teams scares. And you look at York as well. They started the year in tough, and then by the end of the year, they'd kind of bought into Martin Ash's system. They got the right pieces in, especially when Mo Babuli came, and they were giving everyone in the league trouble and could have made the playoffs had they maybe found their feet earlier. So I think it shows that just, a couple of right signings, you get the pieces in from there, you buy into the system. It doesn't take, a grandstand rebuild. Obviously, Ottawa went for it worked, but also I think for some of these teams, you look across the league, I think every team has 5 or 6 players they can build around. It's just a matter of, okay, who do you build, who do you add in to add to those players and to complement them and get the most out of them.
You've been to matches in Ottawa, right?
It's going to be my first time.
Okay, so it'll be your first. So, I mean, even just talking to colleagues and you hear from so many fans, I know you get a lot of DMs. We won't get into specifics, but you get a lot of fan DMs as well. And what are you expecting this weekend in Ottawa? The city's clearly embraced this club. They're getting a lot of mainstream attention in sports media in Ottawa. And I mean, I'm sure they're expecting a big crowd. I know a lot of Forge fans are making the trip. What kind of atmosphere do you think we're going to get on Sunday?
It's going to be magical. I think that's going to be the one thing. It's Ottawa's, from what I've heard and from what I've talked to, these fans, they've been dying out for this. They love their soccer. It's always been a strong soccer city. But, ever since Ottawa Fury in 2015 made that run of the final, and that was a magical run in the city, they were constantly getting 12,000 plus fans for those games. They've wanted a winner. And you look around a lot of the sports unfortunately, they haven't seen many winners. You look at the Red Blacks, it's been a struggle. You look at Ottawa Senators, it's also been a struggle over this past decade. Ottawa 67s as well haven't necessarily done any, big things recently. So you look at, what Atletico Ottawa is being able to do, hosting a final. They're going to go all out for this. They're selling tickets at a rapid rate. They bring energy. They bring noise. They're going to embrace, having a chance to support a team that's in a final. So it's going to mean a lot. I think it's going to be loud. And I think because of that, it's going to be probably might be the best, most entertaining final atmosphere-wise to date, which is great because that just means every year the standard's building and giving other reasons for other franchises to want to follow that and push each year.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, if you're the league, I mean, this is almost an ideal situation. You have Forge, you have kind of the benchmark of the league, and then you have this newish team who, they great fan support. They played their own way. They got their own way, and they have their own style. And on top of that, you're in a CFL stadium, so you have the seats, you have the atmosphere there, which we don't necessarily get in all the markets. So it looks like an ideal matchup. And on top of that, despite what we're talking about with Ottawa being a defensive club, they're not boring either. I think a distinction has to be made sometimes because you wonder if it's just kind of a park the bus type situation. But Ottawa plays a still entertaining brand. We know Forge plays an entertaining brand. So all signs point to a pretty good final this weekend.
Yeah, and I think Ottawa, they're definitely a team that, if it's your team you support, it's a style you can get behind. Again, you might have to be ready for some defending, but they're a team that scores electric goals. I mean, they had a Puskas candidate goal this year from Balou Tabla. You look at that goal from Malcolm Shaw last week against Pacific that sealed their spot in the final. That's a fun goal that got the crowd going. So I think the crowd are going to get behind this. They know what Atletico Ottawa is going to do. They know that they have some difference makers on the pitch. They believe they can go up against everyone. I mean, it's true. They beat everyone this year. They beat everyone home and away, or at least they beat everyone away. I'm not sure about home. They know that they can go up against anyone in the league. So why not go and prove this in a one-game final to bring a title to the city? So Ottawa is going to be behind that. But conversely, Forge as well. They've been in this scenario before. Their 2 titles came on the road. They're no stranger to going into hostile environments. So because of that, it's going to be fun because there's Ottawa's going to be looking, okay, this is our chance. This is our chance to lift something in front of the home fans. But Forge, Bobby Smyrniotis is smirking, almost thinking of a chance to silence a crowd of 10,000+.
Yeah, the players have been talking about all week how excited they are just for the atmosphere. They don't care which club the fans are cheering for. They just want that kind of electric energy. And I guess all players would probably say the same thing. Alex, I'm sure at CanPL.ca, plenty of work being done this week to preview the final. Anything you want to plug that you have coming up? I know the Newsroom podcast is out now, so fans can subscribe and listen to there. And I'm sure there's some written pieces being prepared as well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously lots of great work always from the team over at CanPL.ca. I'm also doing a couple written features for One Soccer.ca for both teams, so certainly both angles of important things to focus. So certainly stay tuned for this, because it's going to be a big game for many reasons. So it's going to be just awesome to see how this week goes, and then when it all comes down, how both teams come out and just hopefully deliver an excellent final on Sunday. I think that's what everyone wants, and in the end, one team will lift the title, and that's what everyone works for the end of the year. So excited that we're finally at this point.
All right, and a perfect way to end the segment. Alex, thanks so much for doing this. I guess we'll see you in Ottawa.
Sounds good. Appreciate it, Anthony. It was a pleasure.
What did I say? Did I not say Alex would be great and he'd be the man for the job? Great as always, Alex Gangué-Ruzic, and you're great as well for listening, for being a part of these channels all season. We're not done yet. It's not a final goodbye or anything, but thank you. Thank you for listening, watching, however you get your Forge content. There is plenty more to come, because we will also have a match day preview. We will check in with a reporter from Ottawa, and also 3 keys to the match, followed by the match in review, which will be done from Ottawa, because I will be there. I really want to see you there, but it's kind of a big ask. So if you can't, you can watch One Soccer, Fubo TV. The support is welcome, however it comes. Plenty more coming up on the Forge Audio Network as we get you set for the CPL Final. Forge FC, Atletico Ottawa, 6 o'clock on Sunday. We'll talk to you soon.
Anthony Urciuoli and Focus on Forge. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts to the Forge Audio Network.